Hi, I'm Frances Proctor, otherwise known as Angel Eyes Online. Welcome to this Xara plus FilterForge tutorial. Nothing but noise. Yes, this tutorial is going to get noisy, but don't go reaching for that volume control. I'm not talking about that kind of noise. I'm talking about visual noise. In digital graphics, noise equals texture, and any of you who read and or did the fabulous fractals tutorial I wrote for the Xara Zone will be familiar with using noise in Xara. Xara has two built-in noises. These are per-lin noise components, and these are the fractal plasma and fractal clouds that you find in the transparency and fills tools. And as great as these are for creating many textures like woods, clouds, fabric, and more, just like I did in that tutorial, there are other types of noise, and FilterForge can easily blend them and provide different ways to manipulate them. And bringing these noise textures into Xara couldn't be easier. So, are you ready to make some noise? Let's get started. Okay, before we get started making some noise, I'm going to show you how to set the default resolutions for your live effects in Xara. To do this, we need to bring up the Options menu. The Option menu can be found under Utilities and Options. There's also, as you can see, a keyboard shortcut, Shift-Control-O, which will also bring up these options. Now what we want is the Effects and Plugins tab. You can see I've got mine showing up here already. Down here under the Effects section, there are two drop-down lists which will let you select a resolution for your effects. These drop-down lists you can also highlight and type in pretty much any amount you want in these. So you can set Xara to render your effects at whatever definition you really need. And for today's tutorial, I'm having mine set here at 300 dpi. It's important to set both the default live effect resolution and the default locked effect resolution, because when you lock an effect, it creates a bitmap in the program's memory, and this number here shows you the definition, the DPI that bitmap will be set at. So once you have these set to 300 dpi, you can simply click OK, and this will dismiss the box. And now we're ready to begin. So I'm going to start with just creating a simple square by holding down the Control key and clicking and dragging with the rectangle tool. Now, it really doesn't matter what size we make this square, but as we want to have this as a fairly large high-res bitmap, I'm going to make it good and big. Now let's go to FilterForge and generate some noise. Live Effects, New, okay. Now, as you can see, this is a noise filter that I've got showing up here. I'm actually going to take you into the filter editor, and we're going to look at some of the noise options that FilterForge has there. And then we'll come back to the interface, and I'll show you how to get some of these noises seamlessly into Xara. So let's create a new filter and open the filter editor. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom out and pull this over. And in FilterForge, all the noise is up here, of course, under the noise category. Now, here is that per-lin noise, which is what Xara's noises, of course, are built on. Filter Forge also has a batch of other noises. These are called whirly-based noises. And there are things like blocks, cells, chaffs, pyramids, stones, and techno. And these noises can be blended together with Perlian noises or used on their own with different settings to create all different kinds of textures and do some pretty interesting stuff. For today, I'm just going to take a Perlian noise and we'll have a look at some of the controls over here. Some of the things that Filter Forge can do with just this one noise. Of course, you can set the roughness, adjust how the contrast, scale it up, scale it down. There is also an angle. You can adjust the angle of this noise. It's got features to stretch it. But as when I take you back to Xara, we're going to be able to do a lot of this in Xara. I'm going to leave the stretch and angles on this set at 0. And what I'm going to do for now is go down here to the controls. I'm going to bring in some slider controls. We'll put a control on the roughness, one on the contrast. I'll bring in another one on the scale. Pull these up here to make room for a couple more. And I'm going to bring in another one, another slider here, and we'll put it on the details as well. And I'm going to bring one int slider control, and I'm going to put it over here on the profile. Before I hook that up though, I'm just going to show you these profiles. As you can see down here, these profiles do different things. We've got linear, we've got camouflage, electricity, ghost, and organic. If you take a look at the electricity, and you can see, I'll just scale it up a bit. You can see how the noise is rendered in different ways. So I'm going to put the int slider control on our profile setting. Then we'll just go over here and I'll hook it up to the result node. And we've basically created a kind of a little mini filter. So I'm going to go down here and save this filter. And we'll give this filter a name, and let's just call this Mini Noise. And click Save. Okay, now it's showing us our first preset, which is where we left it in the filter editor. We can go over here and we can play around with the different settings that we set up. We can maybe drop the contrast down a little bit. And that int slider down here gives you access to the different profiles. Let's go back up to this one. Put the roughness. Increase the details. I'm going to bring this roughness down just a bit. And I'm going to actually scale this up a bit. Alright, you can see you can play around with this and create all kinds of interesting textures. Now before we go back to Xara, I'm going to make sure to remember to click the seamless tiling box because we want this to tile seamlessly. Okay, now you can see how this is seamlessly tiling. So let's apply this and go back to Xara, and I'll show you some of the interesting things we can do with this in Xara. generating a noise like this in Xara is usually pretty quick. As you can see, there it is there. And even with mine slowing down a little bit because of screen recording, that still was a pretty quick render. Alright, so now the first thing I'm going to do is lock this down, as I usually do with all Filter Forge effects. However, locking the effects down has also done something else. Remember that default bitmap resolution that we set before? Well, when you lock it down, this creates a bitmap in the program's memory. This allows you to have an effect in a drawing or whatever you're creating and lock it down, and to be able to share that file with someone else, and they will be able to see your effect without having to have the plugin installed. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shove this off to the side and leave it over there for now. And up here I've got some text. This is just plain ordinary text made nice and big. The font I'm using here is called Emmet. It is one that comes with Xara. If you've got Xara, you have this font. Although any nice big chunky font will do for this demonstration. If you want to use the Emmet font, you will find it over here in the fonts gallery. Simply find it in the list. It's down here, right here, and all you have to do is double click it and Xara will install it for you. So now let's go back to our demonstration here of the different things we can do with this noise. Now I'm sure you're wondering, why didn't I just apply the noise to my text? Well, I could certainly do that, but I'm going to show you another way to work with what we have created. We'll start with the fill tool. I'm going to select my fill tool, and I'm going to change the fill to bitmap. And if we look in the drop-down list here, it shows the bitmap that's created in the program's memory. And as you can see, by selecting this noise, I can set this to a repeating tile, and I can use Xara's fill tool to manipulate this noise. I can adjust the angle, I can squash it and skew it, stretch it, anything you can normally do with Xara's fill tool. But that's not all. When you've got the fill tool selected and the handles showing, go up here and select your photo tools, and we can use Xara's photo tools to do a lot of different things to this noise. You can increase or decrease the lightness, adjusting the contrast, and I'm going to show you, you can also do things with the blur and sharpen. It's pretty kind of cool. And another thing we're going to do is I'm going to go back to my selector tool, and I'm going to adjust this just a bit more. We're going to bring up the color editor now, down here. And you can see, by bringing up the color editor with the fill tool active, I can set the contone colors in the bitmap, the dark contone and the light contone. Simply select them. You can adjust the colors. I'm going to give the dark contone in this kind of a golden, yellowy gold kind of color, like that. Now we'll set the light contone. And I'm going to set with kind of a orangey color. Maybe we'll make it just a bit more of an orangey red. And I think we'll just leave it at that for now. Now what I'm going to do is close this down, and I'm going to show you how we can take this now, as well as working with the fill tool and making all these different changes with the fill tool. I'm going to clone this by using the keyboard shortcut Control K. And I'm just going to go back into the fill tool for a minute. I'll bring up the color editor again. And in this one, I'm going to change the dark contone color. And I'm going to give it just a bit of a brown color. And I'm going to adjust my fill on this one. I'm going to hold down my Shift key and just maybe I'll squash that just a bit. All right. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the transparency tool. And I'm going to go here to transparency, and again I'm going to set the transparency to bitmap. And I'm going to select the filter in there now, and now we can adjust this transparency just like you would do with any bitmap transparency. Squash it, skew it, and with the bitmap transparency we can also profile it. Adjusting these sliders can do some interesting things. All right. So now we've got this interesting looking effect on this text. I'm now going to show you how you can take and use one of Xara's built-in plugins and do something else that's kind of cool. So the first thing I'm going to do is select these two text effects and group them. Control G. Now let's have a look at our effects. And I'm going to go down here to the stylization filters, and we're going to have a look at Xara's emboss effect. I'm just going to quickly apply this so you can see how this is embossing the pattern, giving it kind of an interesting effect. And we'll bring up the depth. And again, because we set the resolution ahead of time, this is also applying this effect at 300 dpi. Dropping down the smoothing slider will bring up more details. And you can see how we've used a little bit of noise and we're creating kind of an interesting texture. This is also how Filter Forge works to create a lot of interesting and unusual textures. Let's make this shiny. And if we're going to make it shiny, let's add some reflection. And I can change the intensity of how the light is shining on the texture. And down here we've got the angle of incidence. This up here controls the direction that your light is coming from. Think of this as like the points on a compass: north, south, east, west, etc. The angle in incidence basically changes the angle that that light is coming at. So here we've got the direction of the light coming in at 135 degrees. We can change this angle to bring that light coming in on an 8-degree angle. And you can see how it does change the way the light affects the texture. And you can do some pretty interesting things and generate some pretty interesting looking textures this way. So, once you're happy with the texture you've created here, all you have to do with this is simply click the X and save your texture. Now I'm going to zoom in so you can have a closer up look at the texture we've created. Not bad. This might make an interesting heading for something. All you'd have to do is simply add a drop shadow. And there you go. An interesting textured heading in just a few simple minutes with some noise. I hope you found this interesting and useful. Thanks for watching.